Well, hello and welcome back to another conversation in the entrepreneurial space. This is all about building depth in business. And I'm Brandon Farr, and I like to walk through some of the discussions about money with you in this one. I'm excited about this topic because money isn't everything, and that's true. But it's also part of the potential energy and the reciprocity in business. So it's a fun topic, and it's one that I know that I really struggled with for a long time because we all grow up with a relationship with finances, and few of us have a healthy relationship with finances. And even if your parents are good role models, you and I, we all still have to find a healthy journey. And in business, we get tested all the time because often we're dealing with larger sums of money, more risk, and it's a beautiful environment, and we've managed to succeed in a lot of ways. We haven't suffered any major losses. We've managed to get paid consistently. We found clients that respect our role in the marketplace, and frankly, we've been really profitable as a company. So, which is great. So, sharing from that place, I want to talk about this, and particularly this. There's going to be general principles that will apply to most businesses. Contracting is the lens that I'm coming through. Contracting is construction. Contracting is web design and IT. Contracting is also consultant services. And there's just some principles in here that I think are going to apply to you. And it's just fun. It's a fun topic, especially when you can find yourself with a sense of freedom. A lot of people are so tense. It's because if you have more money, you're more valuable. Or if I have more money than you, then somehow I'm more valuable. And that's garbage, but that's what we've been trained in. Our system of economics rewards those that have the biggest pile of gold. And I've talked in previous episodes that that accumulation, I no longer pursue massive accumulation in my business. I'm not afraid of having a lot of money. But my paradigm of accumulation was going to take me down a path that wasn't going to contribute to our collective well-being, because then it's about me and it's a selfish thing, and I'd have more than I need, which necessarily means that I have to extract from others. To if I only need this much, but I have this much, then I've taken a surplus, and a surplus comes at the expense of people, planet, the environment, things like this, and I just don't want to do that. So I've discovered we can be very wealthy, and we can be very much in a relationship with our finances. So the money. This isn't a topic about, or conversation about whether you get paid in Bitcoin or not. This is a topic about, the discussion of hourly versus contract. When I say contract, lump sum. This is, I will do this service for you for $75 an hour, or I will do this service for you for $12,437.15 plus tax. They're just two different ways of approaching your client. And oftentimes when you do time and materials, which is what we commonly refer to it as, it's $35 an hour or $75 an hour, $200 an hour, plus the cost of materials times a percentage. And there's typically an industry rate that is set kind of in general. Painters get paid this much, ticketed carpenters get paid this much, electricians get paid this much, plumbers, so on, graphic designers, coders, developers, DevOps, AI specialists, front end, back end, UX, UI, you're gonna have an industry range, and it's gonna kind of set some parameters on what you're able to charge on an hourly basis, and you just need to live within that, and that creates some tensions. It's simpler because it's harder sometimes for people to argue with the hourly rate for a journeyman plumber, because that's what it is. But it's definitely not the most profitable way to build a business. We're going to talk about the nuances of that. And I'm just remembering something from a previous episode, and I just want to offer a correction here. I was talking about our quote closing ratio, and I talked about construction as an average, you hoping to close 2%. I said that incorrectly. What I was thinking in my mind, if you do 10 quotes, you hope to close 2. Which isn't 2%, it's 20. So forgive me, I was speaking quickly and I misspoke there. I talked about as we got better at communicating value through our quoting process. In the competitive bid world, we were closing 8 out of 10, so 80% closure rate rather than 20%, which is massive because every quote you do is essentially a pending contract So you need to give it your time and attention, and if you're only getting 2 of the 10 that you do, that's a lot of wasted time. So we will discuss more about how to vet your clients so you're wasting less time. But we're going to start with hourly versus contract. So I'm going to make a couple of generalizations. This is based on my experience. If you have an experience different than me, great. We're better together, and the diversity of experiences are really going to make for a whole picture. Now, the context I'm coming from, I'm going to speak from that because that's the part that I can own. And I'm going to say that hourly, I avoid hourly at all costs because there's no reward for innovation. And I love innovating. I love being efficient. I love being effective. And I feel like hourly, as a general statement, puts us at odds with our client. And what that means is the client is very aware that every hour you're on site or every hour you're working, you're costing them money. And it also, and so there's just a tension, and it also puts limits on what you can make in a day. You know, if you're making $85 an hour and you work for the day times 8 hours, that's what you're making for the day. You know, there's no, I work smarter, I use better materials, I doubled my productivity for the day, so I get paid twice as much. Okay, but back to the client psychology piece, which is the part that I clued into early on, and it really served us. I realized that even if I was working for $20 an hour, my clients were scrutinizing my time, and it's not a ton of money. And what surprised me is that even when I was working, when I was working for $35 an hour, then $65 an hour, then $85 an hour, and $215 an hour, I got an hourly timesheet. But the theme was always the same, where people would look and go, "Did it really take that long? Did it really have to take that long? I saw you standing around having coffee," or "Do I have to pay your lunches?" Or there's not a lot of recognition for the time before, during, and after a project. That's the administrative part, the I got to go to the store and get materials part. Those elements are outside of the client's eye, and it's like, it's not, if you show up at 10 o'clock to the job site because for the first 2 hours you were at the supplier getting your materials, they're expecting the times, you were here at 10. So you work till 4, there's your 6 hours. That's what you bill me for, right? And then there's this, well, no, actually, well, really? And so I'm paying you to drive around and shop, and all the dynamics. And it was really in this awkward tension that I started to move away from private clients, and brought me into more working like business to business relationships, because it was really hard for people to understand that there's complexities. There's just parts of running a business and doing a successful project that aren't just, my hours on site. And then when I'm on site, it's like, don't stop, don't have coffee, don't go pee, don't go for lunch. And it created a weird dynamic. And I in my mid-20s, I wasn't mature enough to manage that tension or have a healthy relationship with it. I also wasn't a designated professional of such a caliber that, I can charge what I charge and don't ask questions. There's some consultants, some engineers, lawyers, architects perhaps, that can just, this is what it is, take it or leave it. But for most of us, especially if we're starting off, we don't hold that place in the market. We're competing. We're competing for value. And I had some really, I felt tension. I didn't know how to address it at the time. Again, I'm much better at that now. Now that tension doesn't go away when you're dealing with commercial clients or stratas, and hourly still puts in an element of risk for the client. It's admittedly easier for you and I as contractors. It's more brain dead. I say brain dead. You can just, if I know that I'm getting paid, $85 an hour to show up today, which is a common trade rate, at least where I'm at. So, you're going to have a range where you're at, and that's just demographics and market. So I'm going to show up and make $85 an hour today, and I just, plug along, and it's easy to get content there because that's a comfortable income. But I think we can do better, and there's more opportunity for value when we can take responsibility for projects, put them in lump sum packages, deliver that with value, and then innovate to take the time down. You get paid the same amount of money if you take this much, a large amount of time or a small amount of time. The money doesn't change, just how much money you made per hour changes. Yeah, so when I was approaching hourly, you go time and materials, however long it takes, however much materials, client has to take the responsibility for that. There was a lot of risk the client had to take, and there was hesitation because they didn't know if I was going to charge them $500 or $2,500, thinking about small painting jobs, and that apprehension, I come to empathize with that. I mean, who wants unknown? You know, if you're hiring a subcontractor and they say, I don't know what's going to charge, let's find out. You know, unless you have a deep trust with that subcontractor that does develop over time, it's awkward. So I've come to realize in my own experience that when I work hourly, I save the client a lot of money. And some clients that I've done like hundreds of thousands of dollars in hourly work for them, they know that. So they'll actually ask us to work hourly for them, as distinct from having us price it out. That simplifies a few things because it means I can start working tomorrow on your project because I don't need to go through the quantifying exercise of how much time, materials, energy, and equipment, you know, is this going to take, how much risk is involved, because we have a risk profile matrix that helps inform our profit margin, and I can just show up and start doing the work, and so that takes that processing time that we talked about in the previous episode, where you bid the work to your contract award. It can significantly reduce that, especially if part of that process is you quoting. You know, it doesn't take 2 weeks to get all your pricing together. So I'm not afraid of hourly work. I actively avoid it because I know that we understand our business and our capacity well enough that I can make a promise to you. I'll do it for $10,000 would be the project. And if you're comfortable with that money, you're going to say yes or no up front, and it clarifies a lot of things. It also, it rewards us to innovate, because then the responsibility is on us. They have a fixed number that adds clarity for them and confidence for them, and some of the necessary prerequisites as the conversations is that you need to be able to fulfill on your commitments. Whatever you charge, whether it be hourly or contract, you just getting to the end of the project or getting partially through the project and going, I'm sorry, it didn't work, or I didn't realize. Those are awkward conversations. So avoid those. That's your responsibility. That's my responsibility. That's what, as professionals, people are hiring us in business because they want to have confidence, and that's the trust part, you know, whether or not, however you're aligning with them in your communications for the value that they perceive. Do your part to follow through with integrity. That's like one of those things, and we get to do that because as shining lights in the marketplace, not everybody out there is a shyster or trying to take advantage of people. You and I, we get to be beacons of like, no, there's good, honest women and men of integrity in the marketplace. Perfect. Let's be that. So there are some exceptions, though, on the hourly space. Like I'm going to say, do contract as much as you can, as long as you control your time. I actively avoid contract, and I prefer hourly in a few contexts that I'll share with you here. If in new construction, I go hourly. In renovation construction, I go contract. And renovation is distinctly more complicated. Why would you do that? Well, because I control the time box. If I'm working for a general contractor, as a tradesman, I'm one of dozens of tradesmen that they're working with. And oftentimes the general contractor's focus is on budgets, not time. And they get paid by squeezing your money, not by making you efficient in the throughput of their project. So whether or not you get done in 2 days or 7 days is irrelevant to them. There's a larger project, you get to fit into their funnel. And I'm talking generally here, some of my experience, you know, having done this a dozen or so times. It's like, man, I quoted $10,000 to take 4 days, and they weren't ready when I showed up on site the first day. They were really slow. The trades in front of me didn't get their stuff done. There was difficulties in getting materials, whatever their deal is. Got to come back 7 times instead of 4. I don't make any more money for that. So I'll work hourly. I'll find an hourly rate that works for them, and if they don't want to pay that, that's fine. We don't want to work for them because I'm already making less money than I would like to if I'm working hourly. And just in contrast, again, we're talking about money. I promised I'd just be honest, vulnerable, transparent, is like when I'm contracting, I'm expecting to make about $500 an hour is what I know historically. That's what I make. Between 500 and 2,000 is like the operating range, but I don't want to make less than 500. Well, nobody's going to accept. I'm $500 an hour today to paint your bathroom. Yeah, like that's just, people won't accept that. It's outside of their paradigm. They will accept a lump sum quote of $7,432 if they're like, yeah, I can believe that, and they find value and that works for them. They'll pay for that, and then however long it takes you, that's yours. The profit of that is yours. But I know that, and so if I'm billing out hourly, it's like, okay, if $85 an hour is the trade rate, well, I want to make 500 at least. But I can only bill out 85. So if they don't even want to accept the 85, I'm like, I'm not coming to work for free or to lose money or to basically cover my costs. No thanks, pass on that. Moving on to, I'd rather not work than work and lose money. That's just a principle I have. Do as you'd like. Again, my pursuit wasn't to be busy. It was to be an exceptional contractor in our space. That's that. So if the general contractor or the client doesn't have a respect for your time, I actively pursue hourly work, because if it takes 7 days instead of 4, I get paid for those 7 days. It's a de-risking strategy for me, reduces the complexity. Sometimes price-sensitive work I'll do hourly. Sometimes the client, or there's some bid stipulations or some overarching bureaucracy that won't accept anything other than an hourly contract, and they're often prescribed rates. Sometimes working with union context is like, this is what it is, take it or leave it, and I get to make an honest business decision as to whether or not I want to support the client, whether or not the opportunity is something I want to pursue, if it's onto something else, which is totally okay. Other times, if there's unknown elements, and I'm going to explore a bit more of this a bit later, but I can jump into it. If I'm going to address the rotten thing behind this wall, and it's currently behind this wall, and we don't know what's in there, and there's a lot of, I don't know what could be back there, and is there asbestos, and all these sorts of things. What did the other contractor do? What was the problem? Okay, that does represent risk. I've said previously, in renovation contracting, just like this hypothetical situation described where there's rotten behind this wall and I got to fix it, I still prefer contract because I have a system of quantifying these things. But if it's like green is things you understand, yellow is on the fringes of things you understand that might have some complexity, and red is like, I don't know. Your project will always possess green things that are easy, you've done this before, yellow things that are on your edge, and potentially red things that are like, they could go terribly wrong. There's either risk to life, there's risk to business or building, or things that could cost a lot of money. And if there's too much complexity, then I just go hourly. I don't know, how is this wall made of titanium? Is there lead in the wall? Is there concrete back? I don't know. Well, then you can approach it hourly, and that's hedging your bets. And sometimes it's prudent to do that, especially if there's things like an asbestos risk or a lead risk, and like things that cause you to significantly slow down. Because the last thing on my list is if there's a lot of bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is this big overarching term for other people who need to make decisions on your behalf, and you're stuck with the consequences of that. And sometimes that's permitting process, or complicated inspections or rigorous safety protocols. None of those things are bad, but you need to get paid for them. Otherwise, your lump sum contract of $10,000 can just get totally just dissolved in the time between actually doing the work, and that are all necessary requirements of the timeline to do the work. So if there's too much of that going on, if you're in sensitive environments, then yeah, okay, then you're doing it hourly and however long it takes. I'm cautious about getting too deep into those projects, because I know that when I go to work, if I want to make 500 or so bucks an hour at least, and I spend 2 months on a project where I'm making $85 an hour, well, that's opportunity cost gone. Like I don't want to sacrifice that much time at low rates when I want to spend that time contracting at higher rates. So business decision again for you. If you have the people, you have the time, just consider that. Permits and safety, and then inspections. by golly, inspections can take a lot of time, and waiting for the inspector, like we're done our work, the inspector might come 2 days from now, and then they might specify something that you need to do different or in addition to what's already been done, and the back and forth decision, now you have more materials talking to the client, all those back and forth. But honestly, I have to say the consultants, like engineer consultants, are the biggest, I'm not going to say waste of time, but the consumers of time in our construction space, because clients want consultants to sign off on everything. Building inspectors want consultants to sign off as well, so they're in demand, and they're not trying often to make the contractor profitable, the yous and me's. They're looking out for their professional designation, putting the due diligence in. You're often in a queue somewhere, and when we're at the back of the bus, I can wait for 2.5 weeks for a consultant, which brings up another really interesting point. Again, this applies whether you're contracting or hourly, but especially in the hourly space, you need to clarify the terms of payment. This is like things pertaining to the job that you're going to get paid for. For example, downtime. What happens if it's raining? What happens if you're ready for an inspection on Monday and the inspector comes on Thursday, and there's 3 days there where no work's happening? Your crew expects to get paid. Your overhead's still in play. Your equipment's on site or in between. There's an element of that downtime is really expensive. It's probably the most expensive part of business, particularly in construction. And most tradesmen don't realize. They think if I'm not working, day off work. If my truck breaks down, no problem, I'll go home early. Every day you're not working is a day's lost income. And if you're hoping to make $4,000 to $8,000 in a day, that's an expensive day of just waiting. So, the wait. So what happens when you're waiting? Who pays that? Do you pay that? Do you have to absorb that? Does the client absorb that? What happens if these decisions compound and you end up being late for another job? So if I promise, Sally, I'm going to be there September 1st and I'll be done on the 15th. And on the 16th, I'm going to go visit Joe and do some work for him. And on the 16th, he's expecting me to be there. I've lined up my trades. We're ready. And Sally's job goes late because the engineer's slow. And I can't start Joe's job on the 16th. I have to start it on the 20th. That's 4 days of liquidated damage on Joe. I've missed opportunity on Joe's job, and that's a real feat. That's a real expense to me and to Joe. He's had to carry that. So who gets to absorb that cost? Because being late is expensive for everybody, and sometimes there's factors you can't control, weather events and so on. But to start to think, first of all, I had to start thinking about the consequences of these things. Oh my goodness, my time is valuable. The time in between does matter. And the time being late that defers my other compounding issues on my projects, because that also makes everybody else late. That really matters. So tuning into that is really super important for you and your business. And then you need to learn how to communicate effectively so you don't cheese your client off by being rude in the process. But clarifying these terms, and they can be part of your contract, but more than before they're part of a contract, they need to be part of your dialogue, your discourse, your understanding, the metrics that you perceive when you walk into a project and going, hey, if everything goes according to plan, it's this. But what happens if it doesn't? Here's the things that I anticipate might cause delays that are outside of our control. If these things occur, I would ask my client to share the expense with me. And that's where, I'm going to talk about a hybrid approach, and I'll end on this topic before we close this episode. The hybrid approach is really neat because I'll often, especially if we're comfortable, and I would say the project's green as far as a risk, we understand the issues. There might be some yellow things that there's complexity, a little bit of complexity, but not a bunch. We'll do a lump sum, and I'll say, hey, this project will be $10,000 plus tax. And then if there's the chance that we get into something and it's like, oh goodness, this thing we didn't see, or the things are delayed, then I will say those portions we'll do hourly. Would I prefer to make $500 an hour to do all this extra work because that's what I was making in the contract rate? Yes. Will my client accept that? No. Do I want to have conflict over it? No. So I accept the fact that I was making $500 an hour for everything I was contracting, and then I'm making $85 an hour as an example for the little bit of extra, or, well, seeing as how you built the deck, like, could you build me an extra set of stairs? Fine. Time and materials, $85 an hour. That's our hourly rate because that's the trade rate, and we'll do that for you, and we put that aside. And did I get my costs covered? Yes. Did I serve the client? Yes. Was it as profitable as it could? No. But did it avoid all the conflict, and did we preserve the work that we had already Absolutely. So that hybrid space has really served me well, because I'm able to go into a project and really complex projects and say, hey, listen, I understand all of this. I'm pretty sure I understand all of this, but there's these two portions on these two units that I don't know about. So what I'm going to do is quote for you the 96% of the job that I understand. And I'm going to draw a nice little line in my, proverbial line, a written description of where the quoted work stops and where hourly work begins. And the clients are often really appreciative about that, because now they understand the fixed price for the vast majority of the work, and they also understand that, yeah, there are some things we don't understand in there, but that constitutes 4% of the project, and the hourly rate seems reasonable, and we're able to approach that tentatively, have honest upfront discussions. Hey, we're starting those 2 units. Why don't you come on down, lunch today, we'll open it up and we'll let you see what we're doing, and we'll get a sense of whether or not we're in over our heads, or whether we can just keep going. Okay, and then it's the relationship with hourly is in flow. I've preserved the business from the contracting standpoint. We'll describe more about contract and how to do that in the next episode, but this hybrid approach is how you're going to transition, and it's also how I transitioned when I started off. It was all hourly because I was super insecure and I didn't understand a lot, and I thought it was the safest way, and I thought when I've been making $25 an hour, I was doing good, and thought I'd be making $70 an hour, I was doing good. I didn't understand what the potential of the market was. And I didn't have enough experience to know what I could deliver on consistently. If you would have asked me to paint a bedroom, I would have had to do it hourly, because I didn't remember that last time it took me 6 hours. So I couldn't, so 2 bedrooms, well, I'll do $300 a bedroom. I couldn't, eventually got to a point where I could say, 1 bedroom, $300, 2 bedrooms, $500. And if I could do that, I was making $40 an hour, at the end of the day. So anyways, once I gained some experience, I was able to start contracting pieces of it and then doing hourly on your front door or something like that. It was how I stepped into it. And then again, more and more contract as more and more experience, and I started seeing how much more money I was making. And then also feeling that natural relief that the client experienced when I promised them it would be this much money, and then I sent them an invoice for exactly that much money. No surprises, no extras, no overages. We finished on time, we did good work, and everybody was happy and business grew. So, all right. Thanks for sticking with me. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to seeing where this goes next.